The vaalmonica archetype. The theme contains many Italian words. In light of this, its name is possibly a wordplay between the word variare, to vary, in reference to the choice effects of every card, and armonica, which is both the name of the glass harmonica, the instrument depicted on the field spell card, and harmonic, from which the music-themed names of the trap cards may be derived. Angelo vaalmonica and Demono vaalmonica are based on the concept of a shoulder angel and devil, their names being distorted versions of the Italian words Angelo and Demon, a dramatic interpretation and visualization of one's individual conscience that drives them to make morally good or evil decisions and symbolize the inner struggle of a person's choices. Vaalmonica is a theme that revolves around manipulation of the user's life points, at tandem with its two pendulum monsters Angelo vaalmonica and Demono vaalmonica, specifically their pendulum effects to gain resonance counters when gaining life points in the case of Angelo and taking damage for Demono. Once 3 or more resonance counters have been gained on a respective pendulum scale, the player can proceed to link summon the theme's 2 Link 1 boss monsters, Sebefera vaalmonica Hallow Heathen and Duralem vaalmonica Heathen Hallow, a duo of stronger monsters limited merely through this condition to summon them. Celatrice vaalmonica is a water attribute at spellcaster level 4 with 1200 attack and 1200 defense. While you control a monster except Celatrice vaalmonica, your opponent's monsters cannot target this card for attacks. You can only use each of the following effects of Celatrice once per turn. If this card is normal or pendulum summoned, you can add 1 vaalmonica card from your deck to your hand, except Celatrice vaalmonica. If this card is sent to the graveyard and you have 2 vaalmonica cards in your pendulum zones, you can add this card to your hand. This card provides a consistent search for any of the Monica cards, be that a spell, a monster, or a trap card, so it just adds to consistency, and it means that if you've got other vaalmonica cards on the field, this card can't be affected by any sort of attacks on it, which helps to extend your gameplay. This also has the benefit of, if being sent to the graveyard for any reason, if you have 2 vaalmonica monsters which happen to be in the pendulum zones, you can recover this card back to the hand and then obviously resummon using it. Angelo vaalmonica is a dark attribute fairy type pendulum monster at level 4 with a scale of 3 with 1200 attack and 2100 defense. Pendulum effect is, each time you gain life points while you control a fiend monster card in your other pendulum zone, place 1 resonance counter on this card. Once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can immediately after this effect resolves link summon 1 vaalmonica link monster. The monster effect is, if this card is in your hand, you can discard 1 other card, take 1 Demono vaalmonica from your deck and place this card and that card in your pendulum zones. During your main phase, if this card was normal or special summon this turn, you can banish 1 vaalmonica normal spell or trap card from your graveyard, apply whichever effect on that card includes gaining life points. You can only use each effect of Angelo vaalmonica once per turn. This is one of the 2 pendulum monsters that are included in the deck. This one is the life point recovery one. It has quite weak attack points, but it has decent defense at 2100. It is a level 4 monster, so keep that in mind. In terms of the pendulum effect, so long as you keep gaining life points, as long as you've got a fiend monster in the other pendulum zone, which the other one is, you're able to place a resonance counter on this card. And when an opponent makes an attack declaration, you can immediately link summon the vaalmonica link monster. So it does make it really easy to go into your higher level, more powerful monsters. In terms of the monster effect, by just discarding another card, you just take a Demono vaalmonica from the deck and you place it immediately in the pendulum zone alongside this card, so you can set up your monster zones pretty quickly. During the main phase, just as soon as this card is either normal or special summoned, by banishing a vaalmonica normal spell or trap from your graveyard, and bear in mind, since it's from the graveyard, it's not any additional costs or resources that you're burning through. You've probably already used those cards up to send them to the graveyard in the first place. You're able to take the life point gaining effect and copy that ability. This card is very consistent and is necessary to be run probably at max at 3. Demono vaalmonica is a light attribute fiend type pendulum effect monster. It's a level 4 with a scale of 5. It's got 1200 attack and 2100 defense. The pendulum effect is, each time you take effect damage while you control a fairy monster card in your other pendulum zone, place 1 resonance counter on this card. Monster your opponent controls lose 100 attack for each resonance counter on your field. The monster effect is, if this card is in your hand, you can discard one other card, take one vaalmonica from your deck and place this card and that card in your pendulum zones. During your main phase, if this card was normal or special summoned this turn, you can banish one vaalmonica normal spell or trap from your graveyard and apply whichever effect on that card includes taking damage. You can only use each effect of Demono vaalmonica once per turn. So this is the opposite version of the previous card. The pendulum effect, each time you take effect damage, you're just instantly able to place a resonance counter on this card. So this is one example of how you can generate these counters. And each of these counters helps to reduce the attack points of your opponent's monsters. Think of it a bit like how Venom counters work. And also there's another card which is the Pum Princess, which gains counters and can do a similar style of effect. The monster effect simply lets you discard this card and just take an Angelova and this card and put them straight into the pendulum zone, so there isn't any need for additional searching for the deck. This also has the ability to banish a vaalmonica normal spell or trap card, and you apply the effect which makes you take damage. This helps to extend your combos and actually helps to support how the deck is played. Vaalmonica Dismormia is a normal spell card. Place one resonance counter on one card in your pendulum zone that can place a resonance counter on, then apply one of these effects. Either gain 500 life points, then you can add one of your banished Vaalmonica cards to your hand, except Vaalmonica Dismormia, or take 500 damage, then you can add one Monica card from your graveyard to your hand, except Vaalmonica Dismormia. You can only activate one Vaalmonica Dismormia per turn. First part of the effect places instantly a resonance counter on one of your pendulum zone monsters, so this instantly adds to that, and actually through either using one of the two effects, you are then generating the other counter. So each time it's activated, you're generating two resonance counters. First part of the ability, just to gain 500 life points, lets you recover a banished Vaalmonica card to your hand, and it can be a monster, a spell, or a trap. It's not fussed on whichever one you target. Or you can take 500 life points damage, and then you can add a Vaalmonica card from your graveyard back to your hand, except itself. I would say that both effects are useful, and both are implicated in different ways. So the first one gives you life points, and only targets the banished pile. The second effect makes you take damage, but lets you search and recover from the graveyard. It depends on whichever zone within your field it's more relevant for you to access from, given the time. Vaalmonica Internet is a normal spell card. The effect is to apply one of these effects. Unless you have a Vaalmonica card in your pendulum zone, your opponent chooses the effect. It's either gain 5 life points, then if you have any monsters in your graveyard, that can be special summoned, your opponent chooses one of them for you to then special summon to your field. Or you take 500 damage, then you can add one level 4 monster from your graveyard to your hand. You can only activate one Vaalmonica Internet per turn. The first effect is reliant on you having a Vaalmonica card in your pendulum zone, otherwise it allows your opponent to make that decision for you. The first bit of the effect, just by gaining 500 life points, so long as you've got monsters in your graveyard that can be special summoned, your opponent then chooses one of them and it special summons it to your field. This can be a benefit in certain respects, because if you've got very limited monsters in the graveyard, then your opponent doesn't have much for you to kind of decide upon, so whatever they give you will probably benefit. Second ability, just by taking 500 life points of damage, you can recover a level 4, and it has to be specifically level 4 monster from your graveyard back to your hand. Both of the Vaalmonica monsters reach the level 4 requirements, and so are not an issue. Vaalmonica Skelter is a normal spell card. Apply one of these effects unless you have a Vaalmonica card in your pendulum zone, your opponent chooses the effect. Either gain 500 life points, then you can place one card from your hand on the bottom of the deck, then draw 2 cards, or take 500 damage, then you can add one Vaalmonica spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, except Vaalmonica Skelter. You can only activate one Vaalmonica Skelter per turn. First part of the effect requires you to have a Vaalmonica card in your pendulum zone, otherwise your opponent chooses the effect that they apply. First effect, by gaining 500 life points, you just take one card from your hand and then you put it to the bottom of the deck, meaning it's going to be very difficult for you to recover that card, as searching through the deck is often more difficult than having cards in the graveyard. And then in exchange you get to instantly just draw 2 cards. Or the second option is you take 5 points of damage, and you can then search for a vaalmonica spell trap card from the deck and add that straight to the hand. Depending on the situation, one effect may be better for you at that point. Vaalmonica Versaire is a normal spell card. The effect is to apply one of these effects unless you have a Vaalmonica card in your pendulum zone. Your opponent chooses the effect. Either gain 500 life points, then you can activate cards from the top of your deck until you activate a Vaalmonica card, then add that card to your hand. Also shuffle the rest into the deck, or take 500 damage, then you can send one Vaalmonica card from your deck to the graveyard, except Versaire. First bit of the effect is the same as the others. So long as you've got a Vaalmonica card, you can choose the effect. If you don't, then your opponent chooses the effect. The first effect, gaining 500 life points, you can just continue to excavate cards until you reach for a Vaalmonica card. That card is instantly then added to your hand, and then all the other cards go back and you shuffle your deck. So it could be a way of perhaps helping to support the deck reshuffling into better cards. You might have drawn into some things you don't need for the turn, and it means you don't have to run cards such as like Deck Shuffler or Card Trader being another example. The second ability, just by taking 500 life points, you can send a Vaalmonica card from your deck to the graveyard, except a copy of itself. This might mean that it's able to be recovered from the graveyard through alternative effects, or it might have a graveyard effect in and of itself. Vaalmonica, the Agotho-Cacological Voice, is a field spell. When this card is activated, you can add one Vaalmonica monster from your deck to your hand. If a card in your pendulum zone has a third resonance counter placed on it, you can target one monster your opponent controls, take control of it until the end phase, but it cannot declare an attack. You can only use this effect of Vaalmonica, the Agotho-Cacological Voice, once per turn. You can only activate one Vaalmonica, the Agotho-Cacological Voice, per turn. First bit of the ability is similar to most types of field spells. They let you search for the archetype specific cards that you have. You've got other cards that do pretty much the same thing, so there isn't any real difference to that. If a card has a third resonance counter, you're able to snatch steal one of your opponent's monsters until the end of the turn. And this can be applied during yours and your opponent's turn, so it's a good way of disrupting how your opponent plays, and then potentially using their own monsters against them, either by going into battle against you or being used as part of a tribute, link, or exceed or fusion summon of one of your other monsters. Vaalmonica Inverter is a quick play spell card, and apply one of these effects. Either special summon one Vaalmonica monster from your deck. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot activate the effects of monsters on the field except Vaalmonica monsters. Or if you control a non-pendulum Vaalmonica monster, take 2 Vaalmonica pendulum monsters with different names from your deck, add one of them to your hand, and add the other to your face-up extra deck. You can only activate one Vaalmonica Inverter per turn. The first effect just instantly lets you special summon a Vaalmonica monster from the deck. It does mean for the rest of the turn after the effect resolves, you're not able to use the effects of monsters on the field except Vaalmonica monsters, so it does restrict it to its own archetype limits. Second effect, if you have a non-pendulum Vaalmonica monster, you can take 2 Vaalmonica monsters, pendulum monsters, with different names from the deck. One of them gets sent straight to your hand, the other goes to the face-up extra deck, but in all likelihood you're able to recover those cards, so it's not a concern, and it adds to the consistency of the deck. Vaalmonica Chosen Melody is a normal trap card. Apply one of these effects, you must control a Val monster card to activate and resolve this effect. If you control a Val Link monster, you can apply both effects in sequence. Either gain 500 life points also for the rest of this turn, your opponent cannot target Vaalmonica monster cards you control with card effects, or take 5 damage, then you can negate the effects of one effect monster your opponent controls until the end of this turn. You can only activate one Chosen Melody per turn. The first bit of the condition is that you can only use these effects if you've got a Vaalmonica monster card somewhere on your field. If you happen to have a Link monster, you get the bonus of being able to use both effects, but they do have to be in the specific order that's listed on the cards. First actual effect is by gaining 500 life points, your vaalmonica monsters are immune from being targeted by card effects, which is decent. It helps to support the overall protection of the deck and those monsters. Second ability, you take 500 damage. You're able to instantly negate the effect of one of your opponent's monsters until the end of this turn. Any sort of monster effect negation helps to interrupt what your opponent is planning, and they might not be able to make the style and type of board they would have if you'd let the effect go through. Vaalmonica Followed Rhythm is a normal trap card. The effect is to apply one of these effects, and you must control a Vaalmonica monster card to activate and resolve this effect. If you control a Vaalmonica Link monster, you can apply both effects in sequence. Either gain 500 life points, then you can destroy one spell or trap card on the field, or take 500 damage, then you can return one monster from your field to the hand. You can only activate one Vaalmonica Followed Rhythm per turn. The first ability of this card and restriction on it is you do need to have at least a monster card to resolve it, so unless you have that, this card is useless. If you happen to have a Link monster that's a Vaalmonica, then you can use both effects. First ability lets you just gain 500 life points and destroy a spell or trap card on the field. Pretty simple effect. It's a good way of having its own version of Mystical Space Typhoon. Second ability, just by taking 500 damage, you're able to effectively emergency compulsory evacuation device your opponent's monsters. It can also return your monsters if that's more beneficial to you, but more likely you're going to go after your opponents. Duralume Vaalmonican Heathen Hallow is a Dark Attribute Fairy type Link monster. It's a Link 1 with 2500 attack. It requires one effect monster to summon it. It cannot be Link summoned unless you have 3 or more resonance counters on fairy monster cards in your Pendulum Zone. You can only special summon Duralume Vaalmonica Heathen Hallow once per turn. If this card is Link summoned, you can target monsters your opponent controls up to the number of resonance counters in your Pendulum Zone, destroy them. You can remove 3 resonance counters from your Pendulum Zone. This card can make up to 3 attacks during each battle phase this turn. This card I've seen quite a lot being used within the Vaalmonica deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and it's often one of the finishing cards for the deck. It can only be summoned so long as you've got 3 or more resonance counters on a fairy type monster, and it can't be that these resonance counters are split across other monsters. It has to be 3 specifically on at least one card to pendulum summon this card. And if this card is Link summoned, you're then able to target monsters your opponent controls up to a number of resonance counters and destroy them. So potentially, so long as you've got more than 3, more likely than not, you're going to instantly wipe out your opponent's field, provided they don't have any cards that are immune from being destroyed. And by just removing 3 resonance counters, this card is able to make 3 attacks in the turn. These aren't limited to just on monsters, these can be on monsters and direct attacks. Potentially, if your opponent doesn't have any monsters on their field, this card can do 7,500 points of damage just by itself. Zebufera Vaalmonican Hallow Heathen is a Light Attribute Fiend type Link 1 monster with 2,500 attack points. It requires an effect monster, and it cannot be Link summoned unless you have 3 or more resonance counters on Fiend monster cards in your Pendulum Zone. You can only special summon Zebufera Vaalmonican Hallow Heathen once per turn. If a card you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can remove 3 resonance counters from your Pendulum Zone instead. Once per opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can target one of your Vaalmonica normal spell or trap cards that is banished or in your graveyard and apply that card's activation effect. Summon condition on this card is similar to the other one, but it relies on having your Fiend Vaalmonican monster that has to have these resonance counters on them. And if a card you control would be threatened by destruction either in battle or by card effect, you're instantly able to negate that destruction by getting rid of 3 resonance counters. Each turn, as a quick effect, and it has to be reliant on your opponent's turn, you can target a Vaalmonican spell or trap card that is banished or in the graveyard and just instantly use its own effect. So depending on what you really need to do, you can use any of the destructive based effects, you can use any sort of recovery effect, returning types of effects. For example, the spell and destruction of spell and trap cards, that's an example of one. And there are so many options you have. I imagine if this was to get more deck support, then you would have more of an advantage as this card comes out. Vaalmonica Hallow Hymn is a water attribute spellcaster type linked to monster with 3,000 attack points. It requires 2 monsters including a Vaalmonica link monster, and it's unaffected by non-Vaalmonica card effects, while 6 or more resonance counters are on your field. This card gains 1 additional attack each battle phase for each level 4 Vaalmonica monster you control. Once per turn, when your opponent would special summon a monster as a quick effect, you can negate the summon, and if you do destroy that monster, then remove 3 resonance counters from your field. Currently, I think in terms of the Vaalmonica support, this is the only one that isn't in Master Duel yet, and since we had the update a couple of weeks ago at the time of filming, we're most likely not going to get this until at least the next point, maybe some point in July, just to finish off the initial form of support for the deck. This is their boss monster, as it's the only Link 2 monster they have, and it's the strongest one out there. It's a 3,000 attack monster. It's unaffected by non-Vaalmonica card effects, so long as you've got 6 or more resonance counters on your field. It's quite decent, as you can generate those counters very quickly. The requirements on its summoning do need at least a Link monster and an additional monster as well, so you are relying on more heavy investment, but so long as you've got the resonance counters kind of up and ready to go, then this card is not a waste of space. This card is able to attack 1 additional time each battle phase for each level 4 Vaalmonica monster you control, so the more of those you've got on the field, the more attacks you get. And when your opponent would attempt to special summon a monster, you're able to just instantly, as a quick effect, negate its summon, destroying it, and just removing 3 resonance counters from your field. This is a good way of disrupting your opponent before they can actually set up anything really to use any sort of ability. Overall, I think the Vaalmonica archetype is really interesting, and I love the idea of the little angel and little devil on the shoulder, depending on how you are in the circumstances. You know, the whole idea that they kind of influence you either to do good things or to do bad things, and so 1 increases life points, 1 decreases life points, and it's a very consistent form of deck. What we'd like to see in the future, if these cards were to get more support, would be some more monsters. Generally, I do think they need more equivalents of those cards that are actually main deck monsters, not just the Pendulum monsters. But if you're going to make it just an entirely Pendulum-based version of itself, I think you should need some upgrades of those cards. Whatever you think of this deck and archetype, I'd love to hear those in the comments down below. Make sure to like the video, it really helps to support the channel, and if you can subscribe, that would be great as well.